The most notorious talker runs the world's greatest clan, written by Jackie and illustrated by Fame. It stars Noelle Stolen, who is a seeker, and in this world, seekers are adventurers, essentially. It's not an isekai, it's not even like that. In fact, it's actually more, it's not even power fantasy either. You also have Alma right here, who is a you have Alma here, and then Lycia. Lycia is basically like a side character. You're more or less focused on Noelle and Alma, but Alma's more of less a just side character to Noelle, but she doesn't really she's not like a main character per se, but she's more often in it with Noelle. She just comes later on, a couple chapters in too. But anyways, it stars Noelle Stolen, who is a seeker who just wanted to. He's essentially the grandson of the great seeker called Overdeath, who is so powerful enough to essentially chop off the arm of the assassin's leader, which is this person's granddaughter. However, so she is the granddaughter of someone who has fought. The granddaughter of like a legendary assassin who was unable to be killed. However, Overdeath has basically just like chopped off his arm, and this assassin just became extremely scared over Overdeath, who essentially later on dies over an abyss, which is like these large, let's just say, world raid events, essentially. It's like an RPG world. It has like not any like basic stats things. It's not like saying, hey, you get 12 HP and all that. No, it's basically he's a buffer. Essentially, he's like a buffer. There's Vanguard, Rearguard, and then like support, buffer, and all that. That kind of normal RPG like class system, but he is under a talker class, which is actually notoriously known to be a very weak class. So he physically trained himself and he gets a magical gun to essentially shoot magical bullets to actually help him. He's actually extremely intellect. Well, he knows his like forthcoming, and he's very weak in terms of what he essentially needs to do. So he acknowledges his strength. He is not the greatest as he thinks he would be, but he just wants to start a clan to say, hey, I want to be the greatest of all time. And then eventually it's like, hey, the sun doesn't sound too bad. Notorious talker, or essentially something like that. Yeah, Alma is essentially here an assassin, or is technically a scout-based class, and then can class up, which is basically a promotion in a way, or ranking up or changing to like a more advanced or subclass in a way into assassin, but she doesn't necessarily do it yet. There are skills and all that. He needs to focus more on like battle bus and all that. Some of it he actually goes like down to the T's, like very precise, very time management, and he has no time for love. But Alma here is essentially 21 compared to Noelle, who is 16, which is considered the adult age in this kind of world, and you can register to be a seeker at the age of 16. She basically says, I'm just basically your older sister, treat me like that. And then he's like, no, but kind of like that. She constantly just gets in Noelle's bed, and it's weird, normal stuff, I guess. It's a normal it's a fantasy one. I really do enjoy it. Lycia here, you barely hear anything, but she's an archer for another party called it was like a wolf. It was like a wolf beastman as a leader. But yeah, she's an elf. Twin tail tsundere elf, I guess, with yeah. Anyways, moving on. Synopsis goes as follow. Basically, he is all talk, all action. Noelle longs to be a seeker, just like his heroic father, slaying the beast that emerges from the abysses and exploring far-off lands. Unfortunately, it turns out he is nothing but a measly talker, a job with no combat skills whatsoever. Undaunted, Noelle sets out to establish the strongest clan in all the land, using his silver-tongued talker skills to unite assassins and heroes under his leadership. Essentially, he's just basically saying, I'm going to be bigger brain, change and all that. But yeah, it essentially has rated as older teen for 15 and plus. It is 15 US, 19 Canadian, and is published by Seven Seas Entertainment. This is actually one of their more larger light novels in terms of size. Here is I guess a small comparison to a subpar light novel. This is their normal size, how they publish it, just basically this length and height. Yeah. It's basically 127 Cs. The art style, like I said, I do enjoy this really well. If you can kind of look, this is basically the normal like cover art, just without the text. It looks really good. And essentially you get some blurbs. If you like, you can read whoever these characters are. Pause it here, go ahead. Yeah, and then you also get like more stuff like, I would no longer waver, I would no longer mourn, there was only one path for me, I will conquer the strongest to become the strongest. It's essentially Noel, who, yeah, he is just a normal person who just happens to get lucky via his grandfather's wealth, and he just wants to start a clan so he can prove himself that he will be the strongest, not by like brute force, but by being intelligent. He learned from his grandfather over death. His parents technically died to an abyss event. His grandmother has died in childbirth to give birth to his mother, and he's supposed to look like his grandmother, or of sorts, because that's what Overdeath tells him. And he was just being hard because those two were technically the only family. But yeah, this is actually a really good story in my opinion, and the ending is really good. You happen to also get Koga, who was introduced later on in the story, Koga Tsukishimi, who is essentially just a long swordsman from a eastern island. From what I can infer from the text, he is just a normal person who happened to run away from conflict, if I remember right. And then he just happened to be basically sold into slavery, and then just to fight like in a gladiator or Colosseum kind of event. He eventually gets turned over to Albert Gambino, who is a like master or just a family boss of the Gambinos, which is a sub boss of the Finiquinos, which is just like a whole like, yes, mobsters, gangsters, all that kind of thing. He basically just doesn't like Noel and all that. He eventually becomes the master of Koga after killing the halfling. It was kind of expected anyways. The halfling had it coming to him and all that. There was also a village event where Alma and Noel comes, and then Noel actually has no mercy for anyone. Even fairly early on, he sells out his party Blue Beyond. He sells out two of his party members who happen to embezzle the funds and simply run away. He sells them to slavery to Finiquino, and then eventually just says he has no remorse. He is trust can be go in two ways. He can lose it all. He basically doesn't want to develop relationships. And it's kind of later inferred that the other female member in Noel's party actually liked him, but not necessarily explicitly said, because she just basically turned into an evil person, essentially. But yeah, that's kind of a really good thing. I actually really enjoyed it. Would I recommend it? Yes, definitely do read it. It's really good. I'm looking for a second volume, which I do happen to have. So, 9 out of 10. And then change that red button to the green button 2 inches below.